1980 had moments that will never return, but today, you'll relive them. Look at these historic photos and feel the nostalgia. Tell us which one moved you the most.
Welcome to Eternal Moments. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start.
In the Soviet Union of the late 1980s, long lines for bread became a symbol of the regime's economic collapse. Despite being a nuclear superpower, shortages of basic foodstuffs were part of everyday life. Gorbachev's reforms, such as failed to prevent shortages. In these lines, people waited hours for a simple loaf of bread. This image reflects the social deterioration before the end of the USSR in 1991. In 1980, Bushwick, Brooklyn was one of the areas hardest hit by the urban crisis in New York. Following deindustrialization and state neglect, the neighborhood suffered from high levels of poverty, crime, and arson. Many buildings were destroyed or vacant, and the streets reflected social deterioration. However, the community continued to resist with dignity. Decades later, Bushwick would be transformed by gentrification. The 1980 Moscow Olympics were the first to be held in a communist country. They were marked by the US-led boycott in protest of the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. More than 60 countries did not participate, which affected the competition. Despite this, the USSR put on an impressive display as a showcase of its power. It was an event laden with political symbolism in the midst of the Cold War. On August 2, 1980, during the football final at the Moscow Olympic Games, the stadium was filled with Olympic rainbow flags, a symbol of unity and peace among nations. Although the event was affected by the Western boycott, the ceremony sought to convey a message of global brotherhood. The final was between Czechoslovakia and East Germany. Czechoslovakia won gold with a 1-0 victory. This image represents a rare moment of celebration amid geopolitical tensions. On May 17, 1980, Mount St. Helens in Washington seemed peaceful, but it was on the brink of catastrophe. The next day, a massive eruption triggered the largest landslide in recorded history. Everything visible in this image was buried under ash, mud, and rocks. The eruption left 57 dead and transformed the landscape forever. This photo captures the final hours of calm before the disaster. On May 18, 1980, a hiker watches in awe as Mount St. Helens erupts. One of the most destructive volcanic events in U.S. history. The explosion released a column of ash more than 20 kilometers high. Within minutes, it swept through forests, rivers, and roads with devastating force. This frozen moment shows human insignificance in the face of nature's fury. It is an image as impressive as it is terrifying. In 1980, George H.W. Bush ran for the Republican presidential nomination, facing the charismatic Ronald Reagan. During his campaign, Bush promoted a conservative, but more moderate vision, focused on the economy and global stability. He was famous for criticizing Reagan's ideas as voodoo economics. Although he lost the nomination, he became his vice president. This image shows him in full oratory, seeking to convince the American electorate. In this 1980 surveillance photo, the infamous mobster James Whitey Bulger appears in his headquarters, a modest garage in Boston's North End. Bulger led the Winter Hill Gang, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the northeastern United States. While committing murders and extortion, he also secretly collaborated with the FBI. This image shows how he operated with apparent normality in the heart of the city. He was a fugitive for 16 years before being captured in 2011. In 1980, Queen Elizabeth II made history by becoming the first British monarch to pay a state visit to the Vatican. The meeting with Pope John Paul II marked a symbolic moment in the relationship between the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church. It was a gesture of reconciliation after centuries of religious tensions since the English Reformation. The visit also reflected the diplomatic role of the British monarchy. This image captures a moment of great historical and spiritual significance. In February 1980, Mr. Rogers visited the set of the series The Incredible Hulk, a curious encounter between two very different television icons. While Mr. Rogers symbolized calm and childlike education, The Incredible Hulk represented action and drama. This visit showcased the diversity of American television at the time. It also reflected the mutual respect between popular figures. The image captures a rare and friendly moment behind the scenes, 15 years before the 1980 coup that plunged Liberia into a protracted civil war. This image shows American and Liberian women sharing a quiet moment in a residential courtyard in Voinjama, circa 1965. It depicts a time of relative peace and friendly international relations. The scene reflects everyday life before violence and political instability radically transformed the country. It is a nostalgic reminder of more peaceful times and cultural ties. In the 1980 NBA Finals, Philadelphia 76ers star Julius Erving shone with his skill and unique style. Facing off against the mighty Los Angeles Lakers, Dr. J was instrumental in leading his team to success. This colorized image captures an iconic moment as he drives to score, showcasing his dominance on the court. Although the Lakers won that year, Irving left an indelible mark on basketball history. His legacy continues to inspire generations of players. The 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens was one of the most powerful and devastating in U.S. history. On May 18th, a lateral explosion released a massive plume of ash, landslides, and pyroclastic flows that devastated nearby forests and communities. 57 people died, and millions of dollars in damage were caused. This event transformed the landscape and forever changed the scientific understanding of volcanoes. The image shows the fury and magnitude of the natural disaster. In 1980, Belfast was at the heart of the conflict known as the Troubles, marked by sectarian tensions between Protestant and Catholic communities. The city experienced frequent violent clashes, protests, and British military operations. The streets reflected the social division and the damage caused by decades of conflict. Despite this, many people struggled for peace and everyday normalcy. This image captures the tense atmosphere and urban reality of that time. In 1980, Peter Mayhew and Carrie Fisher, famous for their roles in the Star Wars saga as Chewbacca and Princess Leia, were iconic figures in science fiction cinema. This year marked the continuation of the franchise's success with the release of The Empire Strikes Back. Their off-camera friendship reflected the good atmosphere on set, which translated into the chemistry of their characters. The image captures two legends at a key moment in their careers. Their legacy lives on in global pop culture. In the early 1980s, Brixton, in South London, faced high unemployment and social tensions. Many abandoned homes were occupied by people looking for a home and protesting the housing crisis. Squat houses became symbols of resistance and the fight for basic rights. This type of housing reflected inequality and the struggle of marginalized communities. The image depicts a harsh urban reality, but one filled with community spirit. In the 1980s, Helena Bonham Carter was beginning to forge her acting career, standing out for her talent and unique style. Coming from an aristocratic British family, she combined a sophisticated image with a rebellious spirit. This photo of her home reflects her youth and the environment that shaped her before becoming an international star. It was a key period in her personal and professional development. Her eclectic style set a trend in pop culture of the decade. In 1980, during the Soviet-Afghan War, the conflict intensified, with the Taliban resistance against Soviet forces and their allies. This image shows a captured spy facing execution by the Taliban, reflecting the brutality and climate of fear in the region. The war was a covert battleground between superpowers during the Cold War. The photograph highlights the extreme violence and human consequences of the conflict. It is a somber testimony to an era marked by espionage and clandestine warfare. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, Iranian soldiers faced a brutal and prolonged conflict that left millions of victims. This image shows an Iranian soldier on the battlefield, symbolizing the resilience and sacrifice of his people. The war was one of the bloodiest of the 20th century, marked by intense fighting and the use of chemical weapons. Despite the attrition, Iran continued its fight for 8 years. The photo reflects the human cost and the harshness of the conflict in the region. On August 26, 1980, the Harvey's Resort Hotel in State Line, Nevada, was the target of a bomb attack that caused significant damage, but fortunately no fatalities. The attack shocked the local community and raised fears about the safety of tourist sites. This event was part of a series of violent incidents in the U.S. during that time, linked to internal conflicts and tensions. The image captures the destructive effects of the explosion at the hotel. It was a reminder of the vulnerability of even areas considered safe. In this rare 1980 photo, Pol Pot appears in Western clothing after being overthrown as leader of Cambodia. During his rule, 1976-79, he implemented an extreme version of communism that caused the deaths of millions in the genocide known as the Khmer Rouge. After losing power, Pol Pot partially abandoned his ideology and turned to guerrilla warfare. This image reflects a visible change after years of brutal dictatorship and the country's complex political transition. It is a testament to the end of a dark era in Cambodian history. In 1980, New York City's West Side Highway was a major thoroughfare that reflected the city's rapidly changing urban life. At the time, many nearby areas were in decline, marked by industrial abandonment and lack of maintenance. The highway served as a key artery for traffic and commerce. Although the surrounding area still showed signs of deterioration, over time, surrounding areas would be revitalized through urban renewal processes. This image captures a moment of transition in the New York City landscape. In 1980, the intersection of Houston Street and Avenue D in Manhattan was part of the Lower East Side, an area characterized by its multicultural atmosphere and working-class communities. The neighborhood faced high levels of poverty, urban abandonment, and social problems, but it was also a hotbed of alternative art and underground culture. The streets reflected a raw lifestyle, with worn-out buildings and graffiti. Despite the difficulties, the area had a strong sense of community and resilience. This image shows an authentic moment of New York life in the midst of transformation. The WSG Hoffman was a neo-Nazi group that operated legally in Germany until 1980, known for promoting extremist and xenophobic ideologies in the post-war period. Founded in the 1970s, it combined political activism with paramilitary activities, seeking to revive Nazi symbols and beliefs. Although its actions generated concern, they managed to remain within the legal framework for several years. The image shows members of the group at a meeting or public event, reflecting the resurgence of extremism in West Germany during that time. It was a precursor to more radical neo-Nazi movements in the following decade. In this striking image from May 18, 1980, a teenager water skis as Mount St. Helens erupts just behind, showing the dramatic contrast between tranquility and natural fury. The eruption, one of the most violent in U.S. history, shocked many with its magnitude and speed. This scene captures a unique moment where everyday life continues despite the impending disaster. It is a visual reminder of how nature can transform the environment in seconds. The photo symbolizes the coexistence of beauty and danger. In June 1980, expert diver Courtney Brown towed a 55-foot scale model of the Titanic during the filming of the movie Raise the Titanic. This feature film sought to recreate the legendary shipwreck with great realism, using advanced practical models and effects for the time. Brown's work was key to accurately simulating movement and underwater scenes. This image shows a behind-the-scenes look at an ambitious project that combined history and adventure cinema. It represents the technical effort required to bring to life a story that continues to fascinate audiences. In this image from around 1980, a Vietnamese farmer stands in front of the shattered remains of a B-52 Stratofortress bomber, a symbol of the massive air warfare during the Vietnam conflict. The photo reflects the contrast between everyday rural life and the aftermath of the war. Despite the destruction, residents continued their daily work, rebuilding and adapting to the devastated environment. This scene symbolizes the resilience of the Vietnamese people in the face of foreign military intervention. It is a visual testament to the lasting impact of the conflict. In the 1980s, 170th Street in the Bronx reflected the challenges of a neighborhood plagued by poverty, urban abandonment, and social crisis. The Bronx experienced high crime rates and decaying infrastructure, while its communities struggled to survive and maintain hope. Despite these difficulties, the area was the birthplace of hip-hop and a vibrant culture that would transform the city. The image captures an authentic moment of everyday life in a neighborhood steeped in history and resilience. It reflects struggle and creativity in difficult times. This striking 1980 image shows John Lennon signing an autograph for Mark David Chapman in New York, just 5 hours before Chapman murdered him. The tragic encounter reflects the unpredictability of fate and the vulnerability of a music legend. Lennon, a former Beatle and activist, was in a moment of peace and creativity, while Chapman carried fatal intentions. The photo is a harrowing testament to one of the darkest moments in rock history. It captures the clash between fame and unexpected violence. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, many Iranian teenagers volunteered to defend their country in a brutal and protracted conflict. This image shows a young volunteer, a symbol of the commitment and sacrifice of an entire generation scarred by war. Despite their youth, they actively participated in military work and logistical support. The war left deep social and human scars in Iran. The photo reflects both the courage and the harsh reality these young people faced in times of conflict. In 1980, the eruption of Mount St. Helens was observed from a distance by climbers on nearby Mount Adams, capturing an awe-inspiring and terrifying natural spectacle. The explosion released a huge column of ash and pyroclastic flows that transformed the surrounding landscape. This image shows the privileged perspective of those who, from the relative safety of the volcano, witnessed the fury in full swing. It was an event that marked the geography and history of the region forever. The photo reflects the mixture of awe and respect for the power of nature. In the 1980s, Afghanistan was the scene of intense warfare between Soviet troops and Afghan fighters. This image shows soldiers from both sides, in a moment that reflects the tension and hostility of the conflict. The Soviet invasion sought to support the Afghan communist government, facing a resilient and internationally supported guerrilla group. The war caused great devastation and left deep social and political wounds. The photograph symbolizes the ideological and military struggle in the midst of the Cold War. Joe Louis Clark, a controversial high school principal in New Jersey during the 1980s, became famous for his strict disciplinary approach and heavy-handed approach to improving school performance and safety. His unconventional and confrontational style sought to curb violence and deterioration in urban schools. He was portrayed by Morgan Freeman in the 1989 film Lean on Me, which popularized his story. Clark symbolizes a moment in American education, where radical solutions to profound problems were attempted. This image shows his commanding presence and determination. In 1980, the New York City subway faced high levels of crime, becoming a dangerous place for passengers and workers. This image shows an undercover police officer arresting a mugger in the station, reflecting efforts to improve security in the transportation system. Undercover operations were common to combat robbery and violence in the subway. The photo captures a tense and decisive moment in the fight against urban crime. It represents the harsh reality New Yorkers were experiencing at that time, in 1980. 3 former directors of the global smallpox eradication program proudly read the historic news that smallpox had been eradicated worldwide, an unprecedented achievement in public health. This success marked the end of a disease that had caused millions of deaths for centuries. The campaign combined mass vaccination and epidemiological surveillance worldwide. The image reflects the culmination of years of scientific effort and international cooperation. It represents a key milestone in medical history and a triumph for humanity. In 1980, a Polish border guard and his horse rest and drink from a stream while patrolling the Bieszczady Mountains, a region with difficult terrain and dense forests. Despite technological advances, guards still used horses to navigate mountainous and swampy areas inaccessible to vehicles. This image was used in recruitment campaigns, highlighting the connection between humans, animals, and nature in territorial defense. It represents dedication and work under demanding conditions. It captures an enduring tradition in Polish border surveillance. In 1980, Tymruz Vanacha, 112 years old, poses with his son Ivan, a World War II veteran, representing 2 generations, marked by historical conflicts. Tymruz fought in World War I and the Russian Civil War, while his son participated in the subsequent global conflict. The image symbolizes the passage of time and the legacy of family sacrifice in turbulent times. It is a living testimony to the history of 20th century warfare. The photo reflects the connection between past and present through memory and experience. On April 12, 1980, Terry Fox, a 21-year-old Canadian who lost his leg to cancer, began a charity marathon across Canada to raise funds for cancer research. With incredible determination, he ran the distance of a marathon every day, showing strength and hope. After 143 days and 5,373 kilometers, the progression of his disease forced him to stop. He passed away in June 1981, but his legacy inspires campaigns against cancer to this day. This image reflects his courage and commitment to a greater cause. In 1980, members of a delegation from the People's Republic of China visited the San Diego Zoo in California. At a time of diplomatic openness and rapprochement between China and the United States after decades of isolation, this visit reflected mutual interest in cultural and scientific exchanges, as well as a desire to improve bilateral relations. The zoo, recognized worldwide, was a symbol of conservation and international collaboration. The image captures a moment of dialogue and understanding at the height of the Cold War. It represents a step toward global cooperation. Qais Hussein, son of Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein, appears in this 1980s or 1990s image firing a revolver in the air during a social event. Known for his violent and brutal role within the regime, Qais was a key figure in internal repression and military control in Iraq. This gesture, although celebratory, reflects the culture of power and violence that surrounded the Hussein family. The photo depicts an everyday moment within an environment marked by oppression and authoritarianism. It is symbolic of the political and social climate in Iraq at the time, in the 1980s. Charles Boyd Harrelson, a notorious mobster and hitman, was tried for the murder of a federal judge, a crime that shocked the United States. Harrelson, the father of actor Woody Harrelson, was convicted and sentenced to 2 life sentences for this violent act. His figure represents the brutality of organized crime and its impact on the American judicial system. The image shows a key moment during the trial that determined his fate. It is a reminder of the fight against corruption and crime at that time. On May 8, 1980, Yugoslavia bid farewell to Josip Broz Tito, its iconic leader and president for life, in a solemn ceremony in the Belgrade parliament. Tito was the central figure who unified the country for decades, maintaining balance between the republics and avoiding the direct influence of the Cold War. His death marked the end of an era and triggered internal tensions that eventually led to the disintegration of Yugoslavia. The gathered crowd reflected both respect and uncertainty about the country's future. This image captures a historic moment of political and emotional transition. In the 1980s, high school cafeterias were vibrant spaces where students socialized, shared laughter, and forged friendships. Decorated with bright colors and posters, they reflected the youth culture of the time, influenced by music, fashion, and popular trends. These places were a focal point of the school day, where the social and cultural dynamics of adolescence were also experienced. The image shows a typical atmosphere, full of energy and student diversity. It represents an authentic reflection of school life in that decade. A cold morning envelops New York in 1980. The streets breathe steam. Yellow taxis glide among coats and scarves, and time seems frozen in an urban postcard. The city, still marked by the crisis of the 1970s, beats with a nostalgic and defiant rhythm. Between the smoke and concrete, the everyday harshness of an unfiltered era is hidden. This frozen moment captures the raw soul of a metropolis that never stands still. In 1980, Lech Wałęsa defied the communist regime with an act as symbolic as it was courageous. He jumped over the fence of the Gdańsk shipyard to join the striking workers. That moment marked the birth of Solidarność, the labor movement that would change the history of Eastern Europe. Surrounded by tension and hope, Wałęsa became the face of peaceful resistance. His jump not only crossed a fence, but decades of repression. It was the beginning of the end of communism in Poland. On August 26, 1980, Harvey's Resort Hotel in Nevada became the scene of an unprecedented explosive threat. A 450 kilograms dynamite bomb, designed by an extortionist, was placed with surgical precision to maximize destruction. Here, Fire Chief Thomas J. Huddleston examines the device with a mixture of tension and expertise. The device was so sophisticated that any attempt to move it meant immediate catastrophe. It was one of the most complex challenges in the history of FBI and counter-terrorism engineering. The opening of the 1980 Moscow Olympic Games dazzled the world with monumental choreography and a display of Soviet power, under a sky charged with political tension due to the US-led boycott. The Luzhniki Stadium was filled with color, communist symbols, and thousands of athletes marching with impeccable discipline. It was both a sporting spectacle and a geopolitical message. The USSR sought to show its greatness to the world. Despite the Cold War, on that day, sport was combined with propaganda in its most grandiose form. In this image taken by Mark Steinbach, in 1980, a group of Soviet villagers watch, mesmerized, their first encounter with television. The simple yet powerful scene portrays pure wonder before a technological window into an unknown world. In the midst of the Soviet era, when information was controlled, this device held both promise and limits. Their faces blend curiosity, doubt, and wonder. It is an intimate portrait of a people finally touching the future. On April 2, 1980, two radically different worlds collided in the heart of the Vatican: pop art and the Catholic faith. Andy Warhol, icon of irreverent modernism, met with Pope John Paul II, a central figure of spiritual conservatism. Although they seemed opposites, both understood the power of image and cultural influence. Warhol, privately, deeply religious, was visibly moved. It was an unusual moment where fame and faith shared the same sacred space.